Hi guys, Heather here, the designer of Cozy Creative Crochets. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning into my channel. For this tutorial, I will be showing you how to make one of my favorite designs for summer. This right here is the Southwest Bralette. For this tutorial, you will need some worsted weight yarn, a pair of scissors, a 4.25 millimeter hook, a threading needle, and some stitch markers. Okay, let's get started. First, we're going to make a slip knot, and then we're going to chain up 18. Now we're going to make an HDC in the second chain from the hook, and we're going to work an HDC in each chain until we get to the edge, and we're going to work 3 HDC in that last stitch. Now we're going to take our stitch marker and we're going to mark the second stitch of those 3 HDCs you just made. Then continue working along the opposite side, working an HDC in each stitch. Once finished with that row, you should have a total of 35 HDC. Going to chain 1, and then we're going to turn our work, and we're going to work an HDC into the next stitch, and in each stitch up to the marked second stitch from the group of 3 HDC at the top. Okay, then you're going to work 3 HDC in that marked stitch, and we're going to mark the second stitch, and we're going to continue HDCing to the end. Okay, once finished with that row, you should have a total of 37 HDC. Okay, repeat this process until you have reached your desired width to cover your breast. Once you're happy, you're going to fasten off. Each row will increase by 2 HDC. For an A cup, I would do 6 rows, 45 HDC in total. For a B cup, 8 rows, 49 HDC in total. For a C cup would be 10 rows, 53 HDC in total. And for a D cup, 12 rows, which would be 57 HDC. I made mine 6 inches, which is 8 rows. And then you're going to make another one. Okay, once you're finished with both of your cups, we are going to piece them together. So wrong side facing up, we are going to connect the 2 triangles together, making sure the middle tips of each triangle line up. This will keep your bralette straight when piecing the triangles together. Okay, so to attach your triangles together, we're going to use slip stitch. So we're going to start where our stitch marker is. Okay, then you're going to chain 1, and you're going to slip stitch going up the bralette in each of the next 5 HDC to attach. And then fasten off. Okay, now we're going to work on the top of the bralette. So right side facing up, we are going to slip stitch to the right, top right corner of your bralette. Okay, and now we're going to chain up 4. This counts as our first treble, and chain 1. Now we're going to skip one HDC and we're going to work a treble in the next HDC. Okay, chain one. We're going to skip one HDC and work a treble in the next HDC. Okay, and we're going to continue this process until we are left with 2 HDC on our first cup. Okay, we're going to chain one. We're going to skip those 2 HDC and we're going to skip 2 HDC on our second cup and work a treble in the next HDC. And chain one. Now there should be an even space between the 2 cups. And we're going to skip 1 stitch and we're going to treble in the next HDC. And we're going to continue this process until the end of our second cup. Okay, then we're going to chain 4. Okay, now we're going to turn our work, and the chain 4 is our first treble, chain 1, and we're going to skip over the chain 1 and we're going to treble in the next treble. Okay, then we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip over the chain space. We're going to treble in the next treble, and we're going to continue this until you are left with 1 treble on your first cup. Okay, now we're going to chain 1, and we're going to skip over that last treble on our first cup. We're going to skip over the first treble on our second cup, and we're going to work a treble in the next treble. Chain 1, skip over the chain space, and work a treble in the next treble, and continue the same process to the end of the row. Okay, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to turn our work. The chain 2 counts as your first DC. Okay, and then we're going to work a DC in the next chain space. Then work another DC in the next treble. DC in the next chain space. And we're just going to repeat this process to the end of the row. Okay, now we're going to chain up 4. This counts as our first treble, and chain 1. And then we're going to turn our work. We're going to skip over the first stitch and we're going to treble in the next stitch. Okay, then you're going to chain 1. We're going to skip 1 DC and we're going to work a treble in the next DC. And we're going to continue this process into the end of the row. Okay, then we're going to chain 4. That counts as our first treble, and chain 1. We're going to turn our work. Okay, then we're going to skip over the chain space and we're going to work a treble in the next treble. And we're going to continue this process into the end of the row. Chain 2. This counts as our first DC. We're going to turn our work. We're going to work a DC in the first chain space. We're going to work a DC in the next treble, and we're going to continue this process into the end of the row. Okay, then we're going to do a chain 3, which counts as our first DC, and a chain 1. We're going to turn our work. We're going to skip 1 DC and work a DC in the next DC. Chain 1, skip 1 DC and work a DC in the next DC, and we're going to continue this process into the end of the row. Now we're going to work on the straps. If you're changing color, I suggest fastening off and attaching on the other corner. In this case, since I'm using the same color yarn, I'm just going to chain up 70. Once you're finished with your chain, you're going to turn and you're going to slip stitch back down the chain, ending in the same place you started. And then you're going to slip stitch across the top row until you get to the other corner. You're going to chain up 70, and then you're going to turn and you're going to slip stitch back down the chain into its original space. Okay, now we're going to work on the bottom of our bralette. So right side facing up, we're going to slip stitch to the right bottom corner of our bralette. And we are going to chain 3, which counts as your first DC, and chain 1. We're going to skip 1 HDC and we're going to DC in the next HDC. We're going to chain 1, we're going to skip 1 HDC and we're going to DC in the next HDC, and we're going to continue this process until we are left with 1 HDC on our first cup. Once you're left with 1 HDC on your cup, you're going to chain 1, you're going to skip 1 HDC on your second cup, and you're going to DC in the next HDC. You're going to chain 1, you're going to skip 1 HDC and DC in the next HDC, and you're going to repeat this process until the end of your second cup. Okay, then you're going to chain 3, which counts as your first DC, and chain 1. You're going to turn your work. Okay, you're going to skip over the chain space, and then you're going to work a DC in the next DC. Chain 1, skip over the chain space, work a DC in the next DC, and you're going to repeat this process until the end of the row. Okay, now you're going to chain 2, which counts as your first DC. And you're going to turn your work. And you're going to work a DC in the next chain space. And then you're going to work a DC in the next DC. And then work a DC in the next chain space. And you're going to repeat this process until the end of the row. Okay, then you're going to chain 2, and that counts as your first DC. We're going to turn our work. We're going to work a DC in the next chain space. And then we're going to work a DC in the next DC. We're going to work a DC in the next chain space. And we're going to repeat this process until the end of the row. We're going to chain 2, and that's going to count as our first DC. We're going to turn our work. And then we're going to work a DC in each DC until the end of the row. Okay, once finished, you can fasten off. And now we are going to work on the side bands that go around our waist. Right side facing up, we're going to attach our yarn to the bottom right hand corner. Then you're going to chain 2, and that's going to count as your first HDC. And then you're going to HDC in that same the same spot that you just created your chain 2. And then you're going to work 2 HDC in each of the next 3 DCs. And after you're done with that, then you're going to work an HDC in each HDC until you reach just about the middle of your cup. chain 2, turn your work, and then work an HDC in each HDC until the end of the row. Chain 2, turn your work, and work an HDC in each HDC into the end of the row. And you're going to continue this process until the band reaches about the middle of your back. I had a total of 12 rows. Once finished, fasten off. And now we're going to create our other band. So we're going to repeat the same process as our right band for the left side, making sure we have the same amount of stitches. Once done with both of our bands, now we're going to attach the two bands together. So we're going to flip our top so the wrong side is facing out. And we're just going to use slip stitch to attach the bands. If you rather not attach them using slip stitch and you rather a tie back so it's more adjustable, you can do that as well. I suggest making a chain of 250, and that chain you'll just weave in and out of each side, and then, you know, tie a bow at the top. Okay, once done, you're going to fasten off and you're done with your top. All you need to do is just weave in all those ends and you are finished. Thank you so much for watching my tutorial. I can't wait to see all your Southwest bralettes. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to follow, like, comment, and share. Thank you so much. Bye.